Hello. Today we're talking about natural evil and different philosophers, but also just everyday people talking about it. So first off, we got Kate Bowler, and her stance on natural evil is that a lot of people always gotta have a reason for everything or look for a reason in everything that happens. But she thinks that it's totally wrong, that there's not a reason behind natural evil, not somebody who did something bad and that's why they deserve natural evil in that sense. And she also talks about the prosperity gospel on human suffering. And it kind of says that every time something bad happens to you, it's because you did something bad first. So everything that happens to you is just the result of you doing something or you having done something bad in the past. But she completely disagrees with that stance and says that just because something bad happens to you doesn't mean that you have to have done something bad in the past. It's just that humans are fragile and there's no way that we can control natural evil by always trying to be a very good person or a perfect human being. So, what she says in the end is that because the kingdom of God hasn't yet come, sickness, death, and evil is still a thing on earth. So next up, we got David B. Hart, and he first of all talks about guilt and punishment. That some people think that you have to be guilty of something, or everybody on earth is guilty of original sin, and that some people more are sinning more and some people are sinning less. And natural evil is just God punishing people to bring balance to the world, kind of. And he completely disagrees with that stance. Also says that there's no explanation or nothing you can find on natural evil that really he could accept as a reason in the Bible. But he says that suffering is essential to God's creation. So suffering is a part of God's creation and it cannot be, it's just that suffering is essential to the world we live in right now, to the point where the second coming is going to happen and kingdom of God is going to come. Then at that point, everything's going to be perfect. Everything's going to be fine to this extent. But right now, the only thing we have is faith as an answer to evil, not in the sense that we could find an answer to evil in our faith and in our Bibles, but that faith in the way of hope could be an answer to natural evil that we see because we always have the hope that the kingdom of God is going to come and resurrect us and make us perfect. So yeah, at last we have C.S. Lewis, and he kind of says that God does not make people suffer. He is completely sure of the stance that God is not the one who makes people suffer, but suffering is just a natural thing that happens. He says that even when God came down to earth, he had to experience suffering. So that means that even he cannot prevent such thing that's like such natural evils, sufferings, because it's just a completely natural thing that it just happens, that is just essential to the world we live in because at the end of the day, suffering is universal. Nobody who lives on earth can overcome it or be as strong to say that he doesn't have to suffer. There's no such being on earth because we know that the greatest being in general, being God who came down to earth, had to suffer too. So yeah, that's kind of his main argument that even God had to suffer, which means that suffering is universal, which makes it a natural part of living. So those three philosophers agreed primarily on the fact that suffering is not God's decision. It's not something he wants people to feel. He doesn't want people to suffer. He's not the one who decides who suffers. Uh, all of them also agreed upon the fact that you cannot control suffering. Um, Suffering is not controllable. They also all agreed on the fact that there are no answers in faith or the Bible in terms of suffering or natural evil. And they agree on that suffering is inevitable for everybody who lives on Earth. Uh, but they all have the same kind of mindset that they're just waiting for the kingdom of God to come down to earth, so that suffering and natural evil, death, all that bad stuff will be eliminated. And one thing I think they would not agree upon together is that death is God's enemy, or death is the enemy of God, because at the end of the day, that's what David B. Hart would have said, or what he said. But I think that, especially C.S. Lewis, I think he would say that death is not something you could manifest as an enemy of God, because it's just like a natural by part of something good. So it's not initially the enemy of God, but it's just a byproduct of the world he created. So now we got my own stance on that whole thing, and from my opinion, I think that natural evil and natural goodness is just like light and darkness. There is no, if there's no darkness, there can't be light. If there's light, there has to be darkness. So for me, the one is just a byproduct of the other. So if I see, or if I know that there's just natural goodness in this world, there's when God created this earth, there was just goodness in this world. So that on the other hand, that also means that there has to be natural evil, because from how I see it, um, if there is goodness, there has to be evil, and the evil is just kind of a product of there being goodness. So, and the one who I think agrees the most with that stance would be C.S. Lewis. because he also had this mindset that uh, God is not the one who controls the evil or the goodness, but he wants he even he was the moment he came on earth um, had to suffer and had to die. Even though he got resurrected, he had to die. So even he had to go through the process of experiencing natural evil because he was on earth, because he was just like us, he was on earth, and not even he can prevent it because it's just an inevitable thing if you live on earth, no matter who you are, I guess. So, yeah, like natural evil for me is something inevitable that just happens if just and you can experience it if you live on Earth. Um, and the fact that C.S. Lewis mentioned the uh, reincarnation of God on Earth, and that even he had to go through that whole process because it's not in his hands, shows to me that my stance is pretty, or showed me that my stance could be true, I guess, in that matter of fact. So yeah.